3 mornings ago, I got up, made my cup of coffee, heated me up a Pop-Tart, and was browsing the web, relaxing, having my morning cup of coffee, and I realized I was getting angry. I was getting angry because of how slow and bloated the web has become. The web has become a complete dumpster fire, and I'm ready to leave it behind. The alternative? Gopher. That's our topic for the day. So the first thing we should discuss is what exactly is Gopher. Not everybody that watches this will know what Gopher is because Gopher is very old technology. Gopher has been around since 1991. So Gopher is an internet protocol. So in 1991, there were 2 internet protocols that came about: HTTP, the modern web, and Gopher. So your typical HTTP site, of course, well, look at my URL bar, or any URL bar, whatever. If you got Firefox or Chrome open on your machine right now, you'll notice all your web addresses start with HTTP://. You're using the HTTP protocol, the modern web protocol. That also started in 1991, HTTP. Gopher started in 1991, and in the early 90s, they were really competitive. You had some sites that were HTTP, some sites that were Gopher. Not all browsers viewed both Gopher and HTTP, although many did in the early 90s. Gradually, though, the web kind of won out, and Gopher faded into obscurity. Certainly, once you get past the decade of the 1990s, nobody used Gopher anymore. Here in the last year or two, it seems like there's a bit of a resurgence in interest with Gopher, people that are wanting to resurrect the Gopher protocol. The last few weeks on the channel, I've been getting more and more requests from viewers for me to take a look at Gopher. I guess many of you guys think Gopher would be something that interests somebody like me because I'm more of a minimalist. I like minimal programs. I like the terminal. I like the command line. I like terminal-based, text-based web browsers, for example. And Gopher is really kind of right up my alley. Well, again, three mornings ago, I was sitting around on my day off, drinking a cup of coffee, viewing the web, and I thought, it's time. So I went ahead and set up my own Gopher server, put my own Gopher site up. How do you get to a Gopher site? So, in typical web browsers, you start a web address with HTTP:// and then often www.nameofsite.com. With Gopher, it is Gopher:// name of site. So if we wanted to go to a Gopher site I know exists, let's go to my Gopher site. Distro.tube is my domain name, distro.tube. So if you proceed that with Gopher:// it should take you to my Gopher page. Now, if you do this in Firefox or Chrome, it's not going to work. You're going to get an error because those browsers don't support Gopher out of the box. So in Firefox and in Chrome, actually most modern browsers, the plugin you need to add is called Overbyte WX. That particular project, the Overbyte project, is really what is helping keep the Gopher protocol alive in modern web browsers. They create these plugins for your modern web browser that allow you to view Gopher pages in these modern browsers like Firefox. So you install Overbyte WX and you should now be able to type these Gopher web addresses, or Gopher addresses, they're not web addresses, these Gopher addresses in your URL bar, and your Gopher pages should load. So this is the distro.tube Gopher page. Now, we typically will not be using graphical browsers to view Gopher pages because if you look at this, you'll probably notice there's no images, no multimedia. This site was not built using JavaScript or PHP. There's no databases, MySQL, all of that. No. This is plain text. Just glorious, beautiful, plain text for the most part. That is all you're getting with Gopher, and because it's all text, why in the hell would you view this in a graphical web browser like Firefox or Chrome? Well, yeah, it's a good idea to have the Overbyte plugin installed in Firefox or Chrome, because sometimes you might want to view a Gopher site. If you already have the web browser open to view web pages, it makes sense. But if you're just strictly going to view a Gopher site anyway, a better option is to actually use the Lynx web browser. So let me launch Lynx. So if I type Lynx here in the terminal, let me zoom in. And then I'm going to give it a address, not a web address, a Gopher address, Gopher : and then distro.tube. This is distro.tube in Lynx. Lynx has built-in Gopher support out of the box. Why? Because Lynx is a very old web browser. It has been around since 1991. Also, it's funny. So HTTP and Gopher and Lynx all started in 1991. Lynx is the oldest actively developed web browser in existence, still under active development. It also supports Gopher out of the box. So this is my Gopher page. If I scroll down a little bit, actually it's because it's Lynx, we just page up, page down. There's no smooth scrolling in Lynx, but I can do the arrow keys to navigate between all the links on the page. You will see I have these first 4 links here. They are HTML links, so they actually link to web pages. These are HTTP links, so links to my YouTube channel, my Patreon page, my GitLab, my Mastodon, and these actually work in Lynx. So when you view Gopher, sometimes you have a problem linking Gopher addresses and HTTP addresses on the same site. It's because typically Gopher browsers are Gopher browsers and web browsers are web browsers. They typically don't support the other protocol. Lynx is really great because it supports both Gopher and HTTP protocols built in. It's got built-in native support, so this actually will open these web addresses. So if I click on my GitLab link here, it's going to tell me it's redirecting me from Gopher to an HTTP site. So it will just go ahead and launch. It's asking about cookies. All right, and this is my GitLab page. And it's going to keep bugging me about cookies because of the way I launched Lynx. I launched it in the terminal by just typing Lynx and then the name of an address. I actually have a special configuration for Lynx where it does not ask me for cookies ever if I launch it with the hotkey on my keyboard. So this is Lynx again. So yeah, the web addresses, they work. It just Lynx, works as a web browser as well. Most of the other links on these pages are to other Gopher pages, like the X-Penguin page here. Of course, those of you that are subscribed to Hex DSL's YouTube channel know he has a site called X-Penguin. You just go to it, and it's a Gopher site. Matter of fact, he did a video on Gopher about a week or 2 ago. Really good video, very informative video about Gopher. He is very much like me in a lot of ways. He loves things like Gopher, IRC, minimal programs, tiling window managers. So if you're not subscribed to X-Penguin, you probably should check out his YouTube channel. If I do the back arrow key here in Lynx, of course, I go back to this page up to get to the top of my page. So how do you set up your own Gopher page? How do you write this page? Well, first of all, let's start at the beginning. You need a Gopher server. How do you get a Gopher server? Well, you need to sign up for some hosting somewhere, your typical web host. Now, these Gopher pages are just serving plain text. You're not really storing massive amounts of data, no multimedia, so you don't need a lot of storage. You're not going to be using a lot of bandwidth. I would sign up for the most inexpensive hosting you can get. So I'm talking about shared hosting, maybe some of the very inexpensive cloud hosting options, and usually just pick their cheapest plan. There's no reason to buy a bigger plan for something like a Gopher server. So for those of you interested in setting up your own Gopher server, I'll just show you exactly what I did. I have an account over at SkySilk. SkySilk offers some rather affordable cloud hosting options. So when I log into my account here at SkySilk, I already have a couple of servers set up, but say you won't have a server already set up. You're just signed up. Go ahead and create a VPS. So choose create VPS here, and it'll give you a variety of options. Again, because it's Gopher, I would just choose like a standard plan. So if you choose standard, and then you have an option of your operating system. I'm going to tell you, I chose the Ubuntu 18.04 LTS server, and I recommend that's probably what you should probably do, just to make sure that what I do on my video, if you replicate this, it's going to work. Use Ubuntu LTS. It probably will work just fine in Debian. I can't verify that everything I do will be the same on the RPM distros such as Fedora and CentOS. They do offer Arch and Gentoo servers, which is interesting. You guys know I love Arch. I have Arch on all my machines, or an Arch derivative on everything. On my desktop, on the laptops behind me, Arch on a server. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So what I would do is I'd sign up for a cheap cloud hosting option with the Ubuntu LTS. Once you have that created, if you're using SkySilk here, you'll just navigate to that new created VPS that you created, and you should have a couple of buttons here, SSH console and VNC console. This is to log in to that remote web host now. Either one would work. If SSH is really good if you're already in a terminal and you have your SSH keys already set up. VNC is just a nice graphical console that comes up right away here. If you're already in the web browser, it makes sense just to launch your VNC console. It'll take just a second to connect. All right, and we are connected. Now we need to CD. All right. So I am CD into the root directory here. I am the root user. Why am I the root user? Well, if you just created your VPS, the root user should be the only user on the system. You might even have to log in initially, although I didn't have to when I clicked what I did here. So what I would do, let me clear the screen, is as root apt install Gopher D, all one word. I hope you guys can see this. I'm not sure if I can zoom in here or not. I can. So apt install Gopher D. This is the Gopher server. That's all you really need. Install that one package. If I hit enter here, I've already got it on my system. Reinstalling it wouldn't have hurt anything. And that's it. Now what we need to do is check and see if our Gopher server is working. So you need to open up a browser that supports the Gopher protocol. I'm already in Firefox. It supports the Gopher protocol because I have the Overbyte plugin installed. Then we need the IP address for our Gopher server because we haven't really set up a domain name yet on a brand new server we just signed up for. Of course, I already have my domain name squared away, but you won't initially. So then Gopher // and then domain name. But again, if you don't have a domain name, just put in the IP address for your server. Hit enter. And there we go. Of course, I already have my DNS and everything set up, so I have the domain name distro.tube that simply is pointed toward that IP, so distro.tube, and the web address works for me. Once you get your domain name squared away, you'll be up and working right away. Now, you won't have a configured page like this come up, but you will have a Gopher page already on there. It is a sample page that gets installed with the Gopher D package that we installed in our new VPS. The next thing I would recommend doing is, you know what, if you don't already have Filezilla installed on your computer, install a program called Filezilla. It is a FTP client. And let's actually log into our remote server using FTP. So we already know the IP address, right? So now put the IP address here that we had already gotten before. So, and then our username, again, we only had root, then the password, and then the port. The port is 70. Gopher, the port number is 70. HTTP, the port number is 80. Type in your password. And now we are logged into our remote server. The pane on the left here in Filezilla is actually my local machine. This is my desktop, everything on that. And the right pane, that is the remote server we just logged into, the web server. What you need to do is go to the root directory. And by root, I mean the /root, the very root directory. Go to that. In that directory, you have a folder called var. Now, typically in var, this is where you would find your www folder if you were setting up a web server, but also in var, when you set up a Gopher server, it puts the Gopher folder in var, so /var/Gopher. And in this folder now, you probably have a file called Gopher map. PyGopher D, when you install it, puts a default Gopher map. That is the sample Gopher page that you'll see when you first log in. This isn't the sample page, but it'll look very similar. It's a plain text page. It'll have some examples of links and everything on the page. Anyway, what I would do is I would download that Gopher map somewhere to your local machine. So I created a folder on my local machine called Gopher. I downloaded that sample Gopher map, and then I started editing it on my local machine. When you edit it to your liking, just upload it to the remote server, and you should see your new Gopher page. Okay, so you're probably asking, well, what do I need to put in that Gopher map file to make a page like you did, DT? Well, let me show you. So if we open up a terminal, and if I cd into that local folder I created, the Gopher folder, and do an ls, you see I downloaded the Gopher map from my server. And now let's just open this in Vim, and then Gopher map. And this is basically everything that you see on the web page. And this is the same as it looks in links. So that's Firefox, that's links, and this is the Vim document. Basically, plain text is just plain text. As far as anything that's not a link is any line that doesn't begin with basically one of a few special characters. What are those special characters? Going back to the Wikipedia page on Gopher, these are the canonical types in Gopher. 0 is a text file. 1 is a Gopher submenu. And then you have several that, quite frankly, you're never going to use. Again, this is 30-year-old technology, so 2 is a CCSO name server. I don't even know what that is or if it's even still around. Then you've got things like bin hex code encoding that was primarily for Macintosh computers back in the late 80s, early 90s. UU encoded files. There's number 5 is a DOS file. Very few of these you'll actually use. You'll use the 0 for text file, the 1 for the Gopher file. You'll use H for an HTML file. That's really probably the only ones you're likely to use for the most part. And what you need to do if you want to create an HTML link, again, if the line starts with H, you're creating a HTML link. What is the form for that? Well, the form is something along the lines of item type, user display string, selector, hostname, port. This is the way it works. So item type, if I was creating a HTML link, item type would be H. So if I go back to Vim, H is the item type, and then immediately followed by the user display string, the title of that link, and then tab. It needs to be an actual tab, not spaces. If you have spaces if you have your tab in Vim configured so that it just expands to spaces, unset that. So what you need to do in Vim, you need to set space expand tab exclamation point. Make sure you do this, because if you do not have proper tabs, this document will not display correctly. So H, name of title, tab, and then URL : the URL, tab again. That's not a space, that's actually a tab. And then the name of your site, in my case, distro.tube, tab again, port 70. That is how you create a web link. I know that's confusing, but trust me, once you get used to it, you'll figure it out. You're not going to be creating too many web links, I wouldn't think, in a Gopher document. Maybe you will, but I probably wouldn't, though. And then, of course, most of the links we're going to create are to other Gopher pages. Other Gopher pages are in a similar format, except instead of H at the beginning, you'll type 1, title of the link, and then the path to the page that you're going to, tab, and then the name of the site, tab, and then the port number. Again, it's a little confusing at first. It'll take you it took me about 2 or 3 days of playing around with these Gopher maps to kind of figure out how they work. But once you get it figured out, it is dead simple. I mean, setting up that Gopher server with PyGopher D, that is so much easier than setting up a LAMP stack to make a proper website. when you do a LAMP stack, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, setting that up can take a while. Then you got to create your database and users for that database. And then you've got to install, some kind of content management system like WordPress or Joomla, something. You don't do any of that with Gopher. Gopher, you install that PyGopher package, then you write a Gopher map in Vim or some plain text editor, upload it. That's it. You're done. And, when you see this stuff displayed, again, it's just plain text, beautiful plain text. This is that Gopher site I created, distro.tube, here in links. So if we want to navigate around a little bit, so I'll do the arrow keys down. If I want to go to the PyGopher homepage here, this is a Gopher site. I just hit enter. It takes me to the PyGopher Gopher site. Gopher sites are not called sites, like websites or websites. Gopher sites are really called Gopher holes. That is the proper name for them. This is the PyGopher Gopher hole. If I want to read about PyGopher, you can see this link I'm highlighted on. It says it's a file. I'm assuming it's a plain text file, yes. And this is an all-new modern Gopher server. Arrow back, and I could go to their Git tree, which is a link to an HTML file, so it's going to take me to an HTTP page probably. Yes, you can see I'm about to be redirected. Links warns you when you're traveling from Gopher to HTTP that you're about to be redirected. And I could go check out the Git page for PyGopher. It's waiting for a response. You see, even in links, when we're just dealing with plain text, sometimes the HTTP sites take forever to come up. Let me arrow back. But you know what? I could reload my Gopher hole here, my Gopher site, with Control R, and you don't even see a flick or anything. It's just instantly we refresh the page. If I wanted to go a little deeper, navigating through my structure here on my Gopher hole, I'm going to click on my video archive here. How instant was that? Then the next directory, how instant was that? And this is a very large page, by the way. I have a link to about 100 different videos on this one page. And it loads instantly. Gopher is so unbelievably fast. It is, very light, minimal, fast, anything but bloated. So this is what I've been up to the last few days. I think I'm going to start just putting everything on Gopher. No more HTTP sites unless I have to. Obviously, I have to deal with some HTTP sites. I have a YouTube channel. I make videos. Videos are always going to be viewed on the web. Unfortunately, you're not doing any kind of video multimedia stuff in Gopher. So that's unfortunate. Obviously, things like a lot of social media are going to have to take place on the web. That's just the nature of those sites. I'm not much into social media, although I do love Mastodon. I wonder if we could get some kind of Mastodon instance going on Gopher. I'm not even sure if that would be possible. Probably not. But, the last month or two, I've really kind of been going down this road of I don't like modern internet protocols. I'm moving away from HTTP over to Gopher. You guys noticed about a month ago, I moved away from your typical chat formats like Discord, which is big, heavy, bloated, slow, tons of images and multimedia and memes and just all that crap. And I've moved to IRC, and I love IRC. This is the DistroTube IRC channel over on Freenode. So I strongly suggest you guys, hey, hang out with me over on IRC. Also, if you want more about DistroTube, bookmark my Gopher hole, gopher://distro.tube. I'm going to start putting more content there. Heck, I may start writing there. I may, do something like a blog. Now, blog, of course, is short for weblog. That's how the name blog came about. You don't have blogs, though, in Gopher because it doesn't work out. Weblog, shortened to blog. No, in Gopher, you have flogs. Gopher logs, shortened to just flogs, if that makes sense. So I want to challenge all of you guys, join me over on the Gopher space. We need to get this thing really up and running again. We need more action over on Gopher. We need an alternative to the web, a viable alternative to the web. The web is completely hosed. The big companies that dominate the web, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, with all the web properties they own, plus they own all the browsers and the chat clients, they have created just a mess of the web, and it's never going to be fixed. The web is broken beyond repair. The alternative really is Gopher. So again, join me over on the Gopher space. Set up your own Gopher server. You saw how easy that was for me to set up a Gopher server. It takes all of 5 minutes to get your Gopher server up and running. It'll take you a few days to create a Gopher map and create a directory structure. But if you've ever created your own website, Gopher is a million times easier than setting up a website. So set up your own Gopher server. Have your own instance over on Gopher. If you have a website, maybe try to mirror your content both on your HTTP site and on a Gopher site. That would be a really neat thing to do. Just spread awareness about Gopher. Tell your friends and family that may not be aware of Gopher. Anybody that wasn't alive in 1991 knows nothing about Gopher. If you were alive then, if you were, at least a teenager and were around in the early web, you know about Gopher because some of the sites you went to were Gopher sites back then. There were two competing protocols, and sometimes you ended up on Gopher sites. So that is my call to action for you guys, is help me spread the awareness about Gopher and about IRC. The web is totally broken. We're not going to fix it. Let the companies that wreck the web, let them have it. We don't need it. We'll just move on to a simpler, cleaner, faster, less bloated protocol, which is Gopher. Something similar to what the early web was, back in the day when it sucked less. All right, before I go. This show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, Douglas, Dylan, Leo, Rob, Robert, and Tony. They are the producers of the show. They're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without them, this show about Gopher wouldn't be possible. Also brought to you by all those fine ladies and gentlemen, all those names you see on the screen that help support my work over on Patreon. If you'd like to support my work, please do so. You'll find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. You'll also find me at distro.tube over on Gopher. All right, guys. Peace.